In the war against mass murders and other acts of terror, witnesses in the Afghan capital of Kabul say at least 6 waves of U.S. jets struck after dark on this 18th night of the war, bombing targets near the airport and elsewhere around the city. Exactly what targets to what effect? Unknown, or at the very least, uncertain. CBS News national security correspondent David Martin reports there is still much less action on the ground than in the air.
What looks like an anti-aircraft missile streaks past a pair of Navy warplanes. They take evasive action and the missile never comes close. Evidence of just how feeble the Taliban resistance has been. The Air Force alone has dropped 3 million pounds of bombs on Afghanistan. But bombs alone will not win this war.
You can't say that the bombing campaign will win alone because there has to be something happening on the ground.
The U.S. is counting on the Northern Alliance to do much of the fighting on the ground. And Russia is sending them more equipment, about 40 tanks and 100 armored vehicles. But they're waiting for more airstrikes. The Taliban's ability to control Afghanistan is slowly crumbling. But the target of the operation, Osama bin Laden, remains at large, a step or more ahead of the American military.
Does he move? Sure he moves. Have we located him? No. In a way that allowed us to do anything about it? No. Are we continuing the effort? You bet. Do we expect to get him? Yes.
Officials say the U.S. has received a number of intelligence reports on bin Laden's whereabouts, but they are not reliable or current enough to use for launching an attack on his suspected location. The Air Force has now begun operating the Predator unmanned reconnaissance drone out of Pakistan, giving the U.S. a better ability to spot and hit moving targets in southern Afghanistan. But winter will bring clouds that make it harder. All those laser-guided bombs you've seen on television don't work in bad weather. The hunt for bin Laden is much like the hunt for the mobile Scud missiles Iraq was firing at Saudi Arabia and Israel during the Gulf War. The U.S. had almost no success tracking and killing them then, and 10 years later, one official says, we're not much better. David Martin, CBS News, the Pentagon.
Many of the Scud missiles U.S. forces had such a hard time finding during the Gulf War were launched against Israel, and now, as then, Middle East confrontations threaten to inflame a much larger war. Today, Israel pulls some of its troops back from direct conflict with the Palestinians. But as CBS's David Hawkins reports, elsewhere, the violence goes on.
For a week now, Israeli tanks and troops have been battling Palestinian security forces and militant gunmen deep inside Bethlehem and 5 other West Bank cities in some of the fiercest fighting of the year-long conflict. More than 40 Palestinians have been killed, including many civilians. Israel launched the military offensive, it says, to hunt down the assassins who killed an Israeli cabinet minister and to uproot Palestinian terrorists. Today, an Israeli general said a few suspects connected to the assassination were captured in a raid on a Palestinian village yesterday, but not the gunmen themselves.
There is a connection, but the connection is not so strong.
Palestinians called the attack an ugly massacre. At least 5 Palestinian policemen were killed defending the village and appealed for international protection. For days, the U.S. has been calling for an immediate Israeli withdrawal.
Would it be just a matter of an American request? I am sure that we would leave the places immediately.
The Israeli offensive has caused headaches for Washington, threatening to undermine its international coalition against terrorism. The U.S. has been pushing for peace and quiet here while it wages its own war in Afghanistan. David Hawkins, CBS News, Tel Aviv.
Ahead on the CBS Evening News Eye on America, why the American public is not being given an anthrax vaccine that's been available for years.